월드컴에듀 엘리트 영어 명작 길라잡이
Thumbelina. Chapter 1. Thumbelina is born. There once lived a certain woman. She was very lonely. So, she wanted to have a little child. But she did not know where she could get such a child. She went to an old witch and asked her what she should do. The witch said,
"I'll give you this barley corn. Take it home with you and plant it in a flower pot."
"I'll do as you say," said the woman. She thanked the witch, took the barley corn, and went home. At home, she brought out a flower pot, filled it with earth, and planted the barley corn. Almost immediately, 2 tender leaves came out of the soft black soil. The plant grew very quickly, and soon there was a big bud. "This is going to be a beautiful flower," said the woman. And she gently kissed the bud. As soon as she kissed the bud, it opened. It was a beautiful tulip. She was delighted. But she was surprised when she saw a lovely little girl in the middle of the flower. The girl was smaller than a person's thumb, so the woman decided to call her Thumbelina. The woman found a walnut shell and made it into a cradle for Thumbelina. She also made a mattress out of violet leaves and a coverlet out of a rose leaf for her. Thumbelina slept in this cradle every night. During the day, Thumbelina played on the woman's table. A plate had been put there. It was filled with water. The little girl spent her days rowing on the water. Her boat was a big tulip leaf, and her oars were 2 white horsehairs. Thumbelina liked to sing too. Her voice was sweet and beautiful. The woman was no longer lonely. She and Thumbelina lived very happily together. Chapter 2. Thumbelina and the Toads. One night, Thumbelina was sleeping in her walnut shell cradle as usual. Suddenly, an old female toad came into the room through a broken window. She was very ugly. She saw the cradle on the table and crept up to it. Thumbelina was sleeping under the rose leaf coverlet. The toad saw how beautiful the little girl was. Then she said to herself,
"Oh, well, this girl would be such a nice wife for my son."
Then she lifted the cradle with Thumbelina sleeping in it. She carried it through the broken window and got out into the garden. Close to the woman's house, there flowed a river. The mother toad and her son lived in a hole in the bank of the river. The son was just as ugly as the mother. The only thing he could do was croak. So, when the mother showed him Thumbelina sleeping in her cradle, he said,
"Croak, croak."
The mother scolded the son. She said,
"If you croak so loudly, you will wake up the little girl, and she might run away.
Then she continued,
There are many water lilies growing in the river. They have big leaves. Let's put her on one of those leaves. She can play and run about on it, but she will not be able to run away. In the meantime, we can get our best room ready. You will live there with her.
The mother toad swam out to the largest water lily leaf. She carried the cradle with Thumbelina sleeping in it. She put the cradle on the leaf. Then she swam back to her house to get the best room ready for her son and Thumbelina. Morning came, and Thumbelina woke up. She found herself alone, floating on a large water lily leaf. She could not see the kind woman's face anywhere. She became frightened and began to cry. In the meantime, the mother toad and her son had been working all night in order to get the room ready. At last, it was ready. The mother toad and her son then swam out to the largest leaf. When they arrived at the leaf, they found Thumbelina crying. She stopped crying when she saw the two toads. The mother toad introduced her son to the girl.
This is my son,
she said.
He will be your husband. You two will live together in your new home.
Croak, croak,
said the son. When Thumbelina heard that the mother toad was going to make her marry her son, she felt very sad and began crying again. She did not want to marry the ugly toad. Now there were many little fish living in the river. The fish heard the mother's words. They wanted to see Thumbelina. They came near the big leaf and put their heads out of the water. They saw her crying and felt sorry for her.
No,
the little fish said.
She must not be the ugly toad's bride.
So the fish gathered around the stalk of the water lily and chewed on it with their little teeth. Soon the leaf was cut loose. It began to float down the river. How glad the little fish were! As the water lily leaf floated down the river, a white butterfly fluttered around Thumbelina. When the butterfly rested on the leaf, Thumbelina took her belt and tied one end of it to the butterfly. She tied the other end to the leaf. When the butterfly began to fly, he pulled the leaf along. In this way, Thumbelina was able to travel much faster. She was glad. If she went far down the river, the ugly toads could never catch her again. A big beetle came flying along. He saw Thumbelina sitting on the water lily leaf. He flew down and put his claws around her waist. Then he flew up into the air again. Thumbelina looked down. She saw her water lily leaf floating down the river. The butterfly was still tied to it with her belt. She felt sorry for him because she knew that he could not get away from the leaf. He would surely die when the leaf sank. The beetle flew about in the air and came to a tall tree. He put her down on the biggest leaf. Then he gathered honey from some flowers and gave it to her. After a while, all the other beetles that lived in the tree came to see her. They looked at Thumbelina.
Oh, she has only 2 legs,
One beetle said.
She has no feelers,
Said another.
She has no wings,
Said a third.
Why, she is just like a human being,
Said a fourth. Then all the beetles said,
How ugly she is.
The beetle that had brought Thumbelina to the tree thought she was lovely. But he could not let her stay in the tree because all the other beetles said she was ugly. He flew down with her to the ground. He put her on a daisy and then flew away. Thumbelina felt very sad and began to cry. Chapter 3 Thumbelina and the Field Mouse. All that summer, Thumbelina lived alone in a big forest. She gathered some soft blades of grass and wove them into a bed. Then she put it under a large clover leaf. The leaf protected her from the rain. For food, she gathered honey from the flowers growing in the forest. For water, she drank the dewdrops that stood on the leaves of grass every morning. In this way, she was able to live through the summer and autumn. But soon, the cold winter came. All the flowers disappeared from the forest. The leaves of grass turned brown. Thumbelina had no honey to eat and no dewdrops to drink. She was very hungry. She felt very cold, too, because her clothes were thin and they were torn. Thumbelina finally left the forest. She walked on and came to a big cornfield. But there was no corn. It had all been cut by the farmers and taken away. Thumbelina continued walking. Then she came to the home of a field mouse. By this time, she was so cold, so hungry, and so tired that she was almost dead. She knocked weakly on the door. The field mouse heard the knock and opened the door. The mouse saw Thumbelina standing before her and said,
Oh, you poor little girl. Come in.
She was a very kind field mouse. She lived in a house under the ground. It was warm and comfortable there. The field mouse made Thumbelina sit down in a warm room. And at once, the mouse began to prepare a hot meal for her. When Thumbelina had eaten a good meal, the field mouse looked at her thin rags. She brought her some warm clothes and told the little girl to put them on.
We shall have a visitor in a few days,
said the field mouse after a while.
He is my neighbor. He is very rich. He lives in a big house with many rooms. He is always dressed in beautiful black velvety fur. I am sure he will be able to take very good care of you if you marry him. Oh, what does he look like?
asked Thumbelina.
Does he look like you? Oh, no,
answered the field mouse.
He is a mole.
Chapter 4 Thumbelina and the Mole. A few days later, there came a knock at the door. It was the mole. The mole always visited the field mouse once a week. the field mouse let him in. He was dressed in his shining black velvety coat. In the course of the visit, the field mouse told Thumbelina to sing for the mole. She obeyed and sang some songs. Her voice was sweet and beautiful. The mole listened. As you know, moles are blind, so our mole could not see how beautiful Thumbelina was, but he liked to listen to the sound of her voice. Now, there was a long tunnel between the mole's house and that of the field mouse. One day, the field mouse and Thumbelina found a bird lying on the ground in this tunnel. He seemed to be dead because he did not move at all. When the mole heard about the bird from the field mouse and Thumbelina, he went with them to see the bird. With his nose, he pushed up the earth above the bird. An opening was made, and the sunlight came in through it. By the light of the sun, Thumbelina saw that the bird was a swallow.
The poor bird must have died of cold,
said Thumbelina to herself. She felt very sorry for the swallow. But the mole gave him a push with his leg and said,
He's dead. Well, I'm glad I am not a bird. Birds fly about all summer and sing, but when winter comes, they have nothing to eat. Then they starve to death.
Yes,
agreed the field mouse.
What's the use of flying about and singing tweet, tweet all summer if one has to starve in winter?
Thumbelina said nothing, but while neither the mole nor the field mouse was looking, she went near the bird. She gently pushed back the feathers that covered his eyes. Then she kissed the bird on his closed eyes. The mole closed the hole above the swallow. Then they all went home, the mole to his big house, and the field mouse to her small but comfortable home. Thumbelina went home with the field mouse. That night, Thumbelina could not sleep well. She kept thinking about the swallow. At last, she got up. She began weaving a warm blanket with some soft hay, and when it was finished, took it to the bird. She spread the blanket over the bird. Then she took the bird's head and laid it gently on her breast. Then a strange thing happened. The bird moved. He was not really dead. He was motionless because the cold had frozen him. Because of the warmth of Thumbelina's body, the bird was able to move again. The next night, Thumbelina went to the swallow again. He was still very weak, but was alive. He said,
Thank you, little girl. My strength is coming back. Pretty soon, I shall be able to fly about in the warm sunshine again.
How glad Thumbelina was when she heard the swallow's words. Then she said,
Oh, it is still very cold outside. You must stay in your bed. I'll take care of you.
She brought him water in a cup made of the petal of a flower. She brought him bits of her own food. The whole winter, Thumbelina took care of the swallow. At last, the long winter was gone. It was spring again. The bright sun warmed the air. It warmed the earth too, and the swallow became quite strong again. One day, the swallow asked Thumbelina to open a hole in the ground just above the place where he lay. Thumbelina pushed the earth aside and made a hole. The bright, warm spring sunshine came in. The swallow got up. He got out of the tunnel and stretched his wings in the sun. Then he said to Thumbelina,
Thank you for taking care of me. Now I am quite strong. I can fly again. Will you come with me? I can carry you on my back.
No, said Thumbelina. I cannot leave the field mouse. She has been so kind to me. The field mouse will be sad if I go away with you.
Tweet, tweet,
said the swallow.
Then I must say goodbye.
He flew up toward the blue sky and soon disappeared in the green forest. Thumbelina felt very sad when the swallow was gone. Tears came into her eyes. Then she brushed them away and went back to the house of the field mouse. One day, the field mouse said to Thumbelina,
The mole wants to marry you this autumn. What a lucky girl you are. You will have a big house to live in, and there will always be plenty to eat.
The mole was quite pleased with the thought of marrying Thumbelina. But Thumbelina was not glad at all, because she did not like the mole. She grew sadder and sadder as the day of her wedding approached. She often thought of the swallow. She wished to see him again, but he did not come back.
He has flown away somewhere,
Thumbelina said to herself. Towards the end of summer, the field mouse said to Thumbelina,
In a few more weeks, you will be the mole's bride.
Thumbelina wept when she heard this and told the field mouse that she did not want to marry the mole.
Oh, what nonsense!
Cried the field mouse.
The mole is so rich. His house is large, and it is full of food. You must be thankful for your good fortune.
At last, the day of the wedding came. Thumbelina came out of the field mouse's house. She wanted to look at the sun for the last time. She knew that the mole hated the sun. Once she married him, she would live deep in the dark earth and never see the sun again.
Goodbye, bright sun,
Thumbelina said. Just at that moment, she heard a familiar sound.
Tweet, tweet!
Chapter 5 Thumbelina and the Swallow. Thumbelina looked up at the sky, and there she saw the swallow. How glad she was to see him again! The swallow flew down from the sky and stood beside her. Thumbelina told him that she was going to be married to the mole the next day. As she spoke, the tears rolled down her cheeks. Then the swallow said,
Autumn is almost over, and the cold winter will be here soon. I must fly south to a warm country. Will you come with me?"
But how can I go with you?
asked Thumbelina.
"You can sit on my back,"
said the swallow.
"Then we shall fly far, far away to a warm country in the south. You saved my life when I lay frozen in the dark tunnel. Now, I want to save you from the mole. Get on my back and fly away with me."
Yes,
said Thumbelina.
I will go with you.
She seated herself on the swallow's back. Then the swallow flew up into the air. He flew over green fields, snow-capped mountains, and the blue sea. At last, the swallow came to a warm country. The sun was shining brightly. The sky was blue, and the trees had green leaves on them. The earth was covered with grass, and flowers were blooming everywhere. Soon the swallow came to a beautiful palace. It was made of white marble. There were many tall pillars. At the top of one of these pillars, there were many swallows' nests, and one of them was the home of the swallow.
"There, you see my home?"
said the swallow.
"But you cannot live there. It is a place where only swallows can live. But there is a garden full of beautiful flowers. I will take you there. You can live in one of the flowers. I will bring you everything you need."
Oh, that would be wonderful,
cried Thumbelina, and she clapped her little hands for joy. The swallow flew to the garden that was full of flowers. He set Thumbelina down on one of the largest and most beautiful flowers. But how surprised Thumbelina was when she saw a little man in the flower who was white and transparent like glass. He was only a little taller than Thumbelina and wore a small gold crown on his head. On his shoulders there were 2 wings like those of an angel. When this little man saw Thumbelina, he said to her, "What is your name?"
Thumbelina,
the little girl answered.
"Thumbelina,"
said the little man,
"I am the flower angel. Will you be my wife?"
Thumbelina answered,
Yes.
Then, out of every flower in the garden, there came a lady or a lord. Each one brought a present for Thumbelina. They were all wonderful presents, but the present that pleased her most was a pair of beautiful white wings. They were fastened on Thumbelina's back. Now she could fly from flower to flower, just like a butterfly. The flower angel said to her,
"You are the queen of flowers."
and he put a golden crown on her head.